Okay, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Karen Burgess. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Dental Association, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar tonight. I thank you for joining us. I know that this is a very disconcerting time for dentists today, and for everyone, really, but particularly with so much influx. Appreciate your thinking ahead to what life will be like. Next steps, your practice in post-COVID-19 Michigan. I hope everybody was able to get a little bit of time out in the sunshine today. It's a beautiful, beautiful day, and hopefully that is making you feel optimistic about the future. Our presenters tonight include Joe DiNicola, who is the president of Bank of America Practice Solutions. He is with us by phone, and I just want to thank Joe for joining us. He has a very hectic schedule, and as a result, he is catching us on the fly. So thank you, Joe. Also with us is Dr. Dan Peters, who is a life coach consultant for the DBS companies. I know many rely upon Dr. Dan for advice and counsel. And then we also have Ted Schumann from the DBS companies. So those three folks will be providing you with some great information tonight. Now, we'll be starting with Mr. DiNicola, but before we do, I just wanted to let you know that the information that you're receiving tonight is information for your consideration, but really should not be a substitute for any personal advice that you might receive from your own personal advisors. In addition, we are going to be taking questions and answers at the end of the program, but any time while the program is going on, please feel free to use the Q&A feature that you should see at the bottom of your screen, to go ahead and put your information in. I'm going to ask the panelists who are not speaking now to please mute their panel, so that you're not being heard by the participants. And we will turn it over to Joe now. Joe, feel free.
Well, thank you, Karen. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and with all your members. And I do want to say, so if we could just put our phones on mute.
Not you. We're talking. We need Ted Schumann and Dan Peters to have their phones on mute, please.
Thank you, Karen. And to all the members that are here on this call, I can't thank you enough for, we've had 16 years of the MDA's endorsement at Bank of America Practice Solutions. And I can't thank you for the wonderful support that you've given us, my team, and a couple of our team members are on this call today. 3 of the SVPs that are part of this footprint that is so important to Bank of America and Bank of America Practice Solutions, serving the dental community. Nick Ruley, Jeff Cormel, and Chris Osicki, and their executive that runs the East Division, as Ben Stewart, is on this call. And lastly, I'm honored to be on a panel with Dr. Dan Peters and Ted Schumann. The DBS company is an incredible organization that I've had an opportunity to know, and know Ted's dad for many, many years, late Ted Schumann. And the representation that he has in this community is unmatched. So with that, let me just ask one last favor. As we talk about the current events and the current times that we're in right now, please don't kill the messenger tonight. Please don't kill the messenger. And I happen to be part of the messenger that is going to speak to you tonight. So let's talk a little bit about what's the hot topic. Obviously, if some of you had an opportunity to hear the news or see the news this evening, I did not, but my phone was blowing up and my emails were blowing up with regards to the conference that went on this evening. Very interesting. For the first time that a major institution, JP Morgan Chase, had indicated that they will not be ready tomorrow being the magic date, April 3rd, that the CARE Act or Payment Protection Program was going to be available. Now, that's a pretty bold statement from one of the storied institutions in this country. Bank of America being one of those 3 and Wells Fargo being the 3rd. The 3 of us are always participants and should always be participants in programs like this, but there has to be a behind the scenes reason for that. And let me share a little bit of that with you for a moment. is that there is the signing of the bill, which took place last Friday by the president. And traditionally, whenever there's a bill that's signed like this by the president, and it is handed over to a group, in this case, it was the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration has a period of time to produce what they call the Standard Operating Procedures, SOPs. And that period of time is no less than 15 days. So the bill was in place, the bill was signed, and here we are 7 days later when everyone's anticipating that not only the standard operating procedures will be built by the SBA, but also the SBA would have engaged with all the banking institutions that are participant and would have reviewed those standard operating procedures, which lays out the rules and regulations of how we distribute the money. I can tell you right now, it's 7:15. We have still yet to receive those standard operating procedures. And that's why tomorrow will be an interesting day. Now, for Bank of America, are we participating? Of course we are. For tomorrow, Bank of America is ready to handle those customers that are prepared. And first of all, those customers, and just like any customer that is interested in the program, they are first directed to go to the bank that is their primary bank, not to go to a bank that's not their primary bank. So that's the first thing to put in your list. So wherever you have your depository relationships, wherever you have your significant practice business, that's the institution that you need to go to first. All institutions will be taking care of their customers that are represented within that pool first in the queue. Second thing is there's some criteria that most of the banking institutions, including Chase, who has posted this, a criteria that stipulates that you have to have a deposit relationship with that bank in order for you to be a participant in the program through that institution. So that's the second thing to put on your list, is that the deposit relationship will be a key qualifier for the program. Third thing is that there is no intent to do any of this by paper. It is too large. There's too many people that need this help. And so most institutions will have to do this digitally. So as you're gathering all the information that is necessary for you to prepare your package to be submitted under the CARE Act, the one important thing to know is that you won't be able to just produce it and drop it off at the local bank or to the local branch. It'll all be handled digitally. And so when Bank of America and Chase and Wells and PNC and all the other institutions that are participating, they will be taking this information digitally. Fourth piece is to be prepared with the information that will be necessary for you to submit the application. So many people have pulled down the SBA application. Many people have received the application from some source that has produced this and has indicated that this is all you need to produce is this one application. That is absolutely not the case. In fact, the application in most cases hasn't been designed yet. So it's okay that you filled that application out if you have. It'll help you in preparation for the real application, which will be online. Again, no paper submissions, and the application that you have probably received has gone through 4 variations in the last 4 days. So it has all information in it, some of it necessary, some of it not necessary, based on the program. And when we receive the standard operating procedures that we will receive from the SBA, and we're hoping to receive that by tomorrow, if not late tonight, we will be able to build the proper application for you to use as a submission tool, along with your standard information, payroll information, insurance information, basic information that is necessary for you to qualify. We'll be able to download that and submit that application digitally through a portal. A URL or a link that each institution will give you to participate in the program. So those are important aspects of preparation for the program. Now, let's take a look for a second and digress for a moment and introduce the other program that's available to you, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. That program exists today. It's an attractive program, and it is a program that has a 30-year term, repayment term available to it, up to $2 million in advances at a 3.7% rate. Very attractive. And if you are looking for capital to continue to operate your business, that might be an option that you would want to consider. And as Karen started this conversation, started this cast, remember, reach out to your advisors, reach out to the most important people that you have that surround you in your business, that are the thought leaders along with yourself, that help you make these decisions and then make the decision. Part of that program that is so important to remember is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or IDL for short, has a specific ask for it. It asks you what you're going to use the money for. In the program, if you reply that I'm interested to support my payroll, I'm interested in support my rent, I'm interested in supporting anything that has related to the same program parameters for the CARE Act. This is an important factor here. If the purpose of the loan for IDL, put us on mute. If the purpose for the loan for IDL is the same for CARE, you will be disqualified in CARE. So the purpose of the loan is very important if you're going to apply for IDL. And again, be deliberate and understand what you're going to use that money for. Now, you could be using that money to all the things that we've talked about. But really, the only thing I can think of in the dental community, in the dental industry, if you want to use that capital from IDL, would be for inventory. And then secondly, apply to the CARE Act for that capital that represents payroll, that represents interest on loans, that represents insurance reimbursements and rent and the things that it's designed to do. So you can apply for both. You can be approved for both. Be sensitive to when you accept IDL and what you're accepting it for, but more importantly, be deliberate in what you're applying and the purpose field in there. All right. With that said, the availability of tomorrow, let's just set the record straight on that. With regards to the standard operating procedures, and I'm going to pass this ball to Dr. Dan Peters here in a second. With regards to the preparation for tomorrow, the most important thing is for you to be prepared. You should be engaged with your CPA. You should be engaged with firms like DBS and Ted Schumann, who is an expert at helping and guiding individuals to prepare their packages to be submitted with the right information. It's so important to make sure you understand what those packages should be and to submit them correctly the first time. You do not want to be kicked out, and you want to do your best to qualify under the qualifying guidelines of each one of those institutions. And they may be all different, but we know for a fact that deposit relationships are a key. And the reason for that is because if you do this electronically, which we intend to do, and so is Chase and so as well, we can process more of these requests. We can engage with our clients digitally, electronically. We can take the human touch, your human hands out of this process, and we can deposit your money electronically into your account. And that's what we're trying to make sure is set up prior to you choosing the right institution and you submitting your package. Because the more people we can get through, the more people we can help. The more people we can help, the more employees are back to work and supporting the economic engine of this economy. And that is the number one purpose of the program, is to get as many people back to work as humanly possible. And so that's why the number of 500 employees or less was chosen. So we can take some big chunks here and try to get that population back to employment status. Some of you saw the numbers this morning. 6.6 million have applied for unemployment. That is an unprecedented number. That is for the week. So what do we need to do? We need to get the program off the ground. It's probably going to be a little bumpy. Just keep your anxiety as low as humanly possible. Everyone in the banking community is here to help, but we're living under the guidance of the government and at the speed by which the government operates. That's why there's a little anxiety on the institutional side. I don't know what to do. And that is the same for large institutions as little institutions. No institution has the standard operating procedures. So there's not a single one out there that understands what the rules are to extend the credit. So we got to get that done. The websites will probably open up tomorrow. And as those websites open up tomorrow, you go to those websites and look at the information that's going to be there shared with you. Make sure that information that you have in your hands and your package matches up to their information, whatever that qualifying information is. And if the sites are not open, if for some reason many of you are Bank of America Practice Solutions clients, and again, thank you for that. If that site is not open tomorrow, our anticipation is we would put you on a reservation list. So there might be a click or an opportunity there, put on the reservation list, and then we will call you back in the order that we received your request. Again, Bank of America Practice Solutions customers, you have that opportunity to do that, and we hope that that's going to be live tomorrow at 9 o'clock. But it's unlikely, we're working all night tonight, all night. It's unlikely that that application will be there tomorrow. But get your name in the reservation site, and be patient if it's not there in the morning. It might be there in the afternoon or that evening. And of course, all weekend. This is a digital platform. Now, last but not least, and I'll pass the ball, is the program that we have available to all of you. I want to make sure that you have all taken advantage of, not only the Bank of America Practice Solutions Institution, but other institutions that are out there who have provided a payment relief to all of you, 100% of you, surely 100% of those that are at Bank of America Practice Solutions have payment relief with all of your loans. You also have payment relief program for your cards, credit cards, Bank of America credit cards. You have payment relief for any lines of credit. You have a number of those options for you. My hope is that you would have gotten that email or have access to the website where you can click in. You can use Erica and ask Erica on your mobile app, Erica, give me a deferment, give me a payment relief, and Erica will do that for you. If you're not Erica friendly, like I might not be, I'm still in the old school format. I like paper, but you can still go in and make a phone call and call your local representation or call Bank of America Practice Solutions. The team is there ready to help you. So I think that's probably as much information as I was planning to. Happy to stick on for the Q&A, but I'm so interested to hear Dr. Dan Peters to talk about other things that you could be thinking about, other things that you could be working on in preparation for your business to be back running at the pace it was running before. And we had a great, robust economy right before this event, and we will continue to have a great, robust economy when we get over to the other side of that bridge. I can promise you that this business, this industry is resilient. And I have 24 years in this business to prove it. So, Dan, I'd like to pass it over to you, Dr. Dan Peters.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, everybody out there. Before I get going in my presentation, I've got a PowerPoint put together, some things you can be doing right now to prepare your practice, as Joe said. I want to take just a minute, heart to heart, colleague to colleague here. I come at this from 4 different perspectives. First off, I'm a very proud member of the Michigan Dental Association. And I want to take a moment. I want to thank Dr. Margaret Gingrich, our president, the board, the committees, the task force. The hours that they put in have been overwhelming. Number two, I want to thank Karen Burgess and the entire team at the MBA. Again, the overtime. I've been watching. You all know I'm Deb Peters' husband, immediate past president. You're watching the hours she's put in and the dedication that everyone at the MBA has for us. I just want to say thank you to everybody. Second, I, along with Deb, own a dental practice. So I know what you're going through. I'm scared. I'm tense. This is horrible. That being said, I'm optimistic, trying to keep a smile on my face. I know we're going to emerge out the other side of this. The third reason I'm talking at you tonight, I do some coaching and consulting with dental business services. Hard to describe exactly what I do. Best thing is probably tell you I'm a problem solver. So I try to help clients remove barriers between where they are and where they want to be. Dental Business Services, along with the Academy of Dental CPAs, has also donated an awful lot of time to our profession over the last couple of weeks. ADCPA, American Academy of Dental CPAs, have been working with the ADA on most everything the ADA has put out. DBS, again, Ted's a good friend of mine. The hours he's put in, I greatly appreciate it. Nobody's charged for anything. I just, again, want to say thank you to everybody. Fourth thing for me is I know what it's like to have dentistry come to a sudden end. I struggled with the wrist injury for about 18 months. December 21st, 2011, I was extracting a tooth on an 8-year-old, turned an elevator ligament in my wrist, tore the rest of the way. My career was over. I've talked to a lot of dentists the last couple of weeks, and they're really struggling with the fact that I don't have a handpiece in my hand. What do I do now? Now, I'm here to tell you, come out the other side. With that all being said, I'm available to anyone that wants to talk. You need a moment, you need advice, you need anything, I just want to make myself available to anybody. I'm not charging anything either right now, so if you need a piece of my time, please take advantage of it. Now, let me share my screen here, and we'll get going on something. Ta-da! That's my contact information for anybody that may need it. I'm going to pause for a moment if you want to screenshot it. I'm going to show it again at the end. If you are going to contact me, if you would please start with a text message, that would be great. It'd be easier for me, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. If you have an urgent message, please don't hesitate to call me. Number two, a brief disclaimer. I am going to mention some businesses tonight. Some I work with, some I don't. None of them pay me. And as Joe said at the beginning, and Karen said, when in doubt, please do consult with your own advisors. This situation is changing by the minute, as Joe just clearly displayed to us. So here's what I got for you tonight. 5 things you can be doing right now. Number 1, as much as possible, we have to put our business finances into a cocoon. Another way of saying that is we have to stop the bleeding. Anyone looks at the bank account right now compared to 2 weeks ago, we all have less money than we had. We have to protect ourselves. So unfortunately, no matter how generous you are, no matter how much you love your team, we must lay our people off right now. Unemployment is expanded. Typical unemployment pays about $362 a week for a full-time employee. Federal government's going to be adding $600 to it. $962 a week ought to keep you people afloat. If you do have people working in your office right now, take into account that you're going to be paying them money that the federal government will be paying them anyway. So my advice is to take what the federal government's going to give. We do need to bring people in for emergency treatment, a skeleton crew, perhaps an assistant if it's something, perhaps a front desk person. If you can do it yourself, do it yourself. As I said, take every dime that the government is willing to give you as an overall group. This includes the expanded unemployment for your team. From what I understand, we as employers, business owners, can apply for unemployment now. As Joe just talked about, relief from the CARES Act, the EIDL loans, the 7A loans, the government's going to give it to you after you talk to your advisors, make a good decision. Take the money. 7A Paycheck Protector Plan, again, my current understanding is that there will be some payroll forgiveness in this. So hopefully before offices get open, we may have a week or 10-day period where we can bring our teams in, we can do some training, we can do some scheduling, clean the office, everything we all wanted to do when this first closed down. And hopefully the federal government is going to help cover some payroll costs here. From what I understand, it's an 8-week program. I'm not the one to ask that question. That's in Joe's ballpark, not mine. Speak with your financial professionals if you have retirement plans in your business. I'm sure that Ted Schumann will touch on this. Cash balance plans can be frozen. Payments for other types of retirement plans can be delayed. So again, if that cash crunch is there, we have a way to get some relief. If you don't already have one, arranging a line of credit's a good idea, just in case. Better safe than sorry. Hopefully we don't have to touch these things. If you do end up in a situation where you cannot cover your bills, as Joe just said, banks are being very, very flexible right now, perhaps more so than I've ever seen. So as opposed to getting behind on your bills, you can't pay a credit card, whatever the case may be, please don't hesitate to reach out. You may be surprised what you find. Number 2, we should be communicating with our patients. Be present with your patients over social media and your communication software. Hopefully we all have Facebook pages, Instagram pages, Twitter feeds, whatever else you have. Be using them, please, in a positive manner. Communication software is the man for a solution of each lighthouse. If you have them, use them. If you don't have them, even before this, I would tell you to consider adding them. Very powerful software. Let your patients know that our offices are not closed. We are limiting our practices to emergency dentistry only as required by the governor's order and urged by the ADA and MDA. We are open for business, albeit very limited, but we are open for business. Your patients need to know that. We are present. A personal video of you from your home. Shoot it on your iPhone, street clothes, just a personal moment with your patients. Get it up on your social media. Concern for your patients, concern for your dental team, concern for society. Extremely powerful. Once every couple of weeks at least, I would recommend we do this. If you have associate dentists working with you, have them do it, staff members. It's just a nice way to keep in touch. Make it abundantly clear that you are available to help in the time of need. You give clear instructions of how your patients should contact you. I've heard of instances of people trying to get in contact with the dentist and they can't. Either an answering machine or voicemail isn't working. They just don't know what to do. So make sure over social media your patients know how to get in touch with you. Share the MDA document, which is right on the front page of the MDA webpage at this point. Describes an emergency need is and what isn't. Very helpful from the patient's point of view. So every time someone chips in inside their edge, they're not going to be calling you because we're not going to treat those things right now. Use teledentistry as much as possible. Extremely powerful tool that all of a sudden is the most important thing we can have in dentistry. Question people are asking right now is, how do I bill this? MDA's got you covered. I screenshot this right off the MDA website about 2 hours ago. Wonderful information there. Use teledentistry. I got to tell you, I've watched Deb do it several times already since this started. It's been really helpful. Beats going to the office for people you probably shouldn't be crossing with. Number 3, we need to keep in touch with our team at least weekly, if not more. A group video conference at least once a week, like we're doing right now over Zoom. Extremely helpful. But if you are having a falling apart moment, we've all gone through some emotions right now. That's a real lousy time to talk to your team. It's also a very lousy thing to post on social media. If you're on Facebook saying, I'm afraid I might go bankrupt, your team members are going to see that. So we need to be very positive with our teams. They're scared, they're uncertain like we are. Again, reassure them, very calm voice. We're going to emerge out the other side. As Joe said, this is a resilient industry. Their jobs are secure for now. Unemployment's going to help cover them. We're doing okay here. just seeing each other. I've been amazed. We've done this twice with our team already. And just before we even start talking, as people are coming on Zoom, they're waving, they're raising wine glasses, we're smiling, we're laughing. It's been a great stress relief for our team. I recommend you do it as well. There is a ton of online CE out there right now, which is free. Many of the CE vendors have opened up their libraries. They're not charging. I listed a few here: Park Hill, My Social Practice, Garrison Dental. I've done some of these already. Deb's done many of these. The offers out there right now for free CE, they're everywhere. So please, it's a great way to keep your staff engaged, keep yourself engaged. Might as well learn some stuff while we're down here. Encourage your team to help you with the social media messages to your patients. We've had our team sharing some photos and just positive messages of what they're doing. Again, we're reaching out to our patients, but we're also keeping our teams engaged. It's a really good idea to do that as well. Number 4, we are fooling ourselves if we think it's going to be business as usual when we return. It's going to eventually be a new normal. Right now, there is nothing normal about what we're going through. We're going to have to triage our patients carefully. We're going to be closed for, we don't know how long, but let's just say a long time. Patients that have been waiting for major work, those in pain, potential for pain, we all know how to triage. We have to do it very carefully and get those patients in their schedule, even if that makes us move a patient who otherwise is already in the schedule. Someone's got a very routine, nothing little filling, and someone else has a major cavity that's poking on the pulp. We better get them in there. We're all going to have a ton of perio patients overdue as well. Again, we have to prioritize those in the hygiene schedule. Ways to help: strongly consider extending your hours. If at all possible, extend your hours. Everyone wants to say, I don't want to pay overtime. I agree, neither do I. But if the Paycheck protection plan works out the way that we're hoping, we should get some payroll cost coverage there, which should help us afford some overtime as well. But we have a lot of catching up to do. We've got to get cash flowing as soon as possible. That's going to be our biggest issue here. This is almost like a startup situation by the time we get going again. Ways to do that: fill the schedule as much as possible with people that have major needs, are compliant patients, and by that I mean they show up for their appointments, and those with an ability to pay quickly. Especially if you expand hours, these are the patients you want to put into that extended time. If your team at the front desk is not adequately trained in verbal skills to ask for payment over the counter, you must empower them to do this. I track this with every client that I work with. I am telling you right now, 35 to 40% collections over the counter is reasonable and should be tracked. I know one office that does those numbers, and it happens to be mine. It can be done. You need help with it, let me know. Let's shoot for gross production when we return at least 33% higher than it was before the shutdown. So again, we're going to hopefully expand hours. We're going to prioritize the big cases. We're going to get ourselves up and running as quickly as we can. This one I cannot say enough about. If ever you consider using a product like Dental Intelligence, now is the time to arrange a demo. It can help you refill your rebuilt schedule with the right patients by narrowing down your parameters. For example, you can even tell it, find me a patient that needs a crown, that has money left in insurance, they have no balance, and they don't break appointments. I mean, what a great way to build our schedules. Dental Intel is helping offices right now. They're even putting together some of these parameters for you, so you can click on a find me a COVID patient if you want, and it's helping to filter through these big cases. Very powerful software. Just today, I sat through a demonstration with Dental Intel on a new widget they have called Local Med that can allow your patients to do some automated scheduling. Again, very powerful stuff here. We're not going to do this for every filling and what have you, but for your hygiene schedule especially, this looks to be very powerful. It is free right now for the first couple of months. Jump at it. We signed up today. Another great thing to think about right now is an in-house dental plan. Many of you have heard about these things. They're becoming more and more popular in the profession. It's a great time to consider them. Advantages are you get immediate cash flow. Patients pay you a fee upfront to join, typically $300 to $400 range. These are primarily targeted towards retirees, young people, uninsured, underinsured. If you want to search on the MDA website, you're going to see a wonderful guide that's put together by some of our colleagues on how to set these things up. A lot of great documents there, sample documents that are ready to go to your attorney. If you prefer a turnkey option, Quality Dental Plan is a company been around for a number of years, founded by a dentist. They can hook you up and get you up and running almost immediately. Extreme times call for extreme measures. I hate it when people don't pay me. In this case, if you have overdue accounts that you've been chasing after, those 90-day plus accounts, if ever there's a reasonable time to forgive a portion of that loan and negotiate, it's now. And if I give you 10% off, can you pay me in full? I give you 20, I will go 25 if need be. Get yourself paid if you can. This is something you can be doing right now, even as you close without a team. Number 5 and last on the list here, when to begin scheduling. I'm recommending about a week before your expected reopening. We don't know when that is yet. Hopefully we'll get some clarity sometime soon. This is something you can do yourself. Ideally, you bring in a key employee or two, remembering that you're still not collecting any money at this point, so be wise how you use your team. Keep them on unemployment if you can. Hopefully, again, the 7A Paycheck Protector Plan is helping get us some coverage here so we can afford to bring people in. Again, I can't reiterate enough, shoot for the patients with the most urgent needs, the largest cases, those that keep appointments, and those that will pay you quickly. We need cash flow. And do make sure that all of your patients understand that you think you're going to open, you may reschedule them, you may have to reschedule them should your office be forced to remain closed. I want every patient to know that, we're putting you in this first week back. If the governor tells us another week, we're going to need to move you again. Just want to be upfront and honest about that. If rescheduling is needed, once we get close to going back, we know we're in that neighborhood. Let's do it in 1 week increments so we can clear a week if we need to. Hopefully, when they tell us we're going back, we actually get back. With that, my friends, there is my contact information again. Again, I am open for anyone that wants me. If I can do anything to help or just be someone to talk to, please do get in touch with me. And please do get in touch with other colleagues as well. That colleague down the street that was your competitor that maybe rubbed you the wrong way, wasn't your favorite person, right now may be by themselves and scared out of their mind. Please pick up the phone and let's take care of each other. With that, I'm going to shut off my screen and I'm going to send things over to Ted Schumann.
Thanks, Dan. I would like to just take a moment to salute the Michigan Dental Association for continuing to put together great webinars like this. I think this is exactly what the profession needs at this point in time, to a lot of the points that Dan just made about how we're not in this alone. We're all sort of in this together, need that mutual support, need as many resources as possible. I've been very blessed to know Dan for a long time. He's been a long time friend of DBS, and also want to give a shout out to Joe DiNicola from Bank of America. Joe probably opened this with the thing that's on the forefront of everybody's mind, at least it's the thing that's been keeping us busy here at the office, and that is some of the SBA and EIDL financing options that are going to be available to practices. And as he mentioned, we're getting just bits and pieces of this every day or two from legislators, from lenders, that sort of thing. And it's to Joe's point, the SOP, the standard operating procedure, isn't actually fully published yet, but that's what's going to be keeping us all busy here in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for more details on that. Now I'm going to actually go over to my formal PowerPoint here. And I'm hoping that you all are able to see that. And this is sort of my take on what's going on from the financial services, tax, and practice management standpoint. Just a couple of bullet points about myself before I get too deep into the slide deck here. My name is Ted Schumann II. I am one of the partners of the DBS companies. I'm the managing partner of DBS Investment Advisors. We are Michigan Dental Association's endorsed vendor for investment management and financial planning to MDA members. As you can see on the screen, I'm a 2006 graduate of Central Michigan University's Personal Financial Planning Program, Fire Up Chips. I've been a CFP certified financial planning practitioner since 2010. I hold 2 master's degrees from Walsh College, 1 MBA, 1 master's in finance, and I'm also an accredited investment fiduciary. Coming up in 2 weeks exactly, I will be celebrating my 13th work anniversary here at DBS. Came to work at DBS on April 16th, 2007. Third generation in the business, and I will tell you that the last couple of weeks here at DBS have been some of the busiest that I've ever seen in my career. And I was working this job in 2008, just to put that in a little bit of context. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on as it relates to how practices are going to operate. Dan touched on a couple of great tips to keep practices moving forward and operational. And of course, that a lot of questions coming from clients about how they should be approaching this as it relates to cash flow, taxes, and managing all those sorts of items. So I'm going to move forward and talk a little bit about the EIDL and the Paycheck protection loan that are available. So these are the 2 big financing mechanisms. Joe DiNicola touched on these at the beginning of our presentation. These are the 2 big financing mechanisms that are currently being explored by dentists in Michigan for help to ease any burdened cash flow in their practices while we have had to pause practice operations. I think the ADA and a variety of other sources have done a number of webinars, and there's a lot of articles and things like that out describing both of these programs. I think Joe touched on it a little bit at the beginning. I'm not going to reopen a deep dive into what EIDL or Paycheck Protection Program loans are. I do want to talk a little bit about them strategically, though. And one of the things that we're suggesting to practices is that if you're taking either one or both of these loans, probably one of the best things that you can do would be to open a separate bank account to deposit those loan proceeds into. Probably most important for the PPP or the Paycheck Protection Program, but important for the EIDL as well. The reason that you're going to need to do that, or the reason that you're going to want to do that, is because of the application for loan forgiveness that you may be submitting a few weeks down the road. So most of us know, or at least have heard by now, that the payroll or the Paycheck Protection Program carries with it a provision for loan forgiveness if at least about 75% of the loan proceeds are going to pay qualified expenses, namely payroll for your practice. The idea is we're trying to get people back to work as soon as possible. I'm suggesting that a separate bank account be open, a separate practice account be open to deposit those funds into, so that it's easy to trace when that money came in and how much was used for which payroll cycle, for example. So that when we go back to apply for that payroll forgiveness, we have a lot of documentation that we can use to support the position that we use the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, loan proceeds for their intended purpose, and so we subsequently qualify for the forgiveness provision that's sort of carried in that program. So I would encourage you to open separate bank accounts, only move money over from the PPP account to your normal operating account in exactly the number of dollars that you need to pay for payroll for a given cycle. If you're very organized and if your payroll provider would allow for such a thing, I would highly encourage you to have your payroll provider debit the payroll for those couple weeks that you're using the PPP money. Have your payroll provider debit those funds directly from that separate bank account to further substantiate that those dollars were used for their intended purpose. So this isn't going to be a lot of strategy about how to use either EIDL or the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Program loan, but it is a matter of how you're going to manage those funds from a cash flow standpoint once they hit your account, once your loan is approved, and once those dollars are usable for paying some of that practice overhead. So, want to go from there and talk a little bit about unemployment benefits. Dan mentioned a few minutes ago that unemployment benefits are increased by as much as $600 per week. That's part of the CARES Act that sort of contained all this legislation, with not only the unemployment benefits but some of the new tax flexibility as well as the loans that I mentioned on the previous slide. The $600 in additional money is actually money that the federal government is deploying, but they're deploying it through the state unemployment program. So most of us know at this point, state of Michigan, of course, administers the unemployment program for Michigan citizens. Typical unemployment benefit was $362 per week. The extra $600 that's now available is actually money coming from the feds that's going to be reimbursed to the states. The states are going to front it, and the federal government's going to reimburse it. There's also an extension on unemployment benefits. Went from 26 weeks, now we have a 13-week extension over and above that. Can capture about 39 weeks of unemployment benefits after the passage of the CARES Act. So those are things that hopefully your staff and potentially even yourself can take advantage of if you're a practice owner. For the first time, at least that I recall, practice owners are now eligible to file for unemployment benefits. That includes practice owners or owners of dental practices that are organized as corporations, as well as practices that are not organized as separate corporations. So those would be your LLCs and your sole proprietorships. Used to be that the self-employed were excluded from unemployment benefits. Not the case anymore. They're sort of waiving that. And so for a lot of clients, we're having a discussion with them about whether or not it makes sense for them as the practice owner to file for unemployment benefits. I would certainly explore that for those of you that are practice owners on this webinar. I would certainly explore that if I were you. You have to obviously be careful if you are going into the office to see patients, or even if your practice, particularly as a corporation, is continuing to pay your salary, even if you're not seeing patients. You could run into some complicating factors there, but it's the right strategy for the right person. So I would encourage most dentists, most owner dentists, to explore that to see if they can get some unemployment benefit subsidy while we're waiting for the COVID-19 fog to lift here. So moving forward a little bit, we can talk about some tax considerations. There contained a few provisions in the CARES Act to help out a little bit with some tax considerations and some tax filing deadlines and things like that have since been moved as a result. One of the things that I'm talking to clients about is reminding them that in a situation like this, cash is king. And the more of your money that you can hold on to, and the longer that you can hold on to it, the better off you are going to be. So as you can see on the screen, and as most of you have probably heard by now, the income tax filing as well as payment deadline have been extended from that magical day of April 15th that we're all so used to, actually into the middle of July. So you have until July 15th to not only file your taxes, but also actually make the payment. That wasn't the case a few weeks ago when we convened for the previous webinar, but that is legislation that has since been enacted in an effort to help ease cash flow both in businesses as well as in households across the country and across the state of Michigan. What does this mean? Well, it means that we can hold on to our dollars a little bit longer than we used to. It also means we have more time to do things like pay retirement plan contributions. Those of you that are practice owners that sponsor retirement plans, you're probably used to paying those matching contributions or those profit sharing contributions into the plan before you file your corporate tax return for the year, including extensions. Well, for those of you that used to pay those by maybe March or April, you now have until July to make those contributions and hold on to those dollars a little bit longer and maybe use them for operating expenses during this time of furloughed operation. In addition to that, there's also been a delay of the Social Security part of payroll taxes. Again, for those of you that are practice owners, you know that you have the luxury of paying part of the Social Security tax in on behalf of your employees. From now until the end of the year, you have a little bit of flexibility in that, insofar as you're getting a break on payroll taxes owed on behalf of employees between now and the end of the year. Now, all that glitters is not gold. That doesn't mean that money is gone forever. It just means that the federal government has elected to give you a break on paying that money for the rest of 2020, and they're allowing you to repay it in installments over 2021 and 2022. So it's not like that money doesn't get paid into the system. It's not as though that money is going to somehow reduce Social Security benefits later on for you and your employees. It just means that the dollars don't have to come out of your bank account quite as quickly as they typically would. Government's giving you a little flexibility on that. As we're looking at how practices are going to operate in 2020, it's an important opportunity to sort of take a look at what suspending operations and being on an emergency only basis is actually going to make your practice look like from a revenue and profitability standpoint. So as we go into the month of April here, and maybe a question mark as to when we'll be returning to business as usual, we have to take a look at how our practice numbers are going to look, and then what planning and what consequences those sorts of things are going to have. Easiest one, as you can see from the sub-bullet here on the slide, is that there's an opportunity to adjust your 2020 estimated tax payments if you consider the fact that your profitability, especially for the first and second quarter of 2020, is probably going to be below where it would have been historically, or it's probably going to be below where you had planned on it being maybe at the first of the year. If your profitability is a little bit lower, then you should adjust your tax estimates accordingly. And I would strongly encourage you to contact your CPA with maybe any tax planning or forecasting that you have done to set up your tax estimates and see if those estimates are they still relevant. Again, cash is king. And if we have an opportunity to reduce some tax estimates because we're not making as much money in the first and second quarter as we typically would, let's cut Uncle Sam's part out of the deal a little bit and keep more of those dollars in our own accounts as opposed to paying them into the federal government. To that end, some of you may or may not know that in addition to extending the time that we have to pay taxes for 2020, there's also now flexibility in terms of time to pay tax estimates. This is weird. This is I think federal government logic at its best. Those of you that are used to paying estimated taxes know that there's typically a tax estimate due on April 15th. Well, the federal government decided to grant a little flexibility to taxpayers and extend the time that they have to make that first estimate to July 15th. However, the second tax estimate of the year, which is typically due on June 15th, is still due on June 15th. So even though it would technically be the second tax estimate that would be paid, it's actually due before the first tax estimate is paid because of that extension that the IRS is allowing for. Again, these are great things to talk to your tax professional about. Make sure that you're set up not only for the correct tax estimates, but also for the correct timing of submitting those tax estimates. Keep as much of that cash on hand as you possibly can. Brings me sort of to my last point. We are in tax season right now. Even though we do have a little bit of an extended tax season this year, we are still processing 1040 tax returns and whatnot for clients, which we've been doing for a good long time. Typically, for clients that would be entitled, especially practice owners, that would be entitled to a tax refund. Most practice owners that take tax refunds don't necessarily take them in cash. Instead, what they do is they elect to push that refund forward to apply it to the following year's tax situation. You may want to rethink that strategy just this one time. If you're someone who's due a large tax refund, you may consider taking some or all of that in cash to bolster your cash position, recapitalize, if you will. If you have a large tax refund coming, you may want to take all that refund in cash and or maybe just push part of it toward the 2020 tax liability as opposed to pushing all of it forward to 2020, which is something you may have been in the habit of doing for the last several years. When you consider the fact that your first and second quarter of 2020 might show a lower profit than you otherwise would have, and you would prefer to have that cash on hand, you might be able to get away with taking some of that refund in cash and maybe only pushing a portion of it forward. Again, not necessarily applicable to every situation, but a good thing to talk to your tax professional and make sure that you're on the right track and have the most efficient plan in place that you can to kind of get you through sort of a time in your life or a time in your practice, I should say, that's a bit of an anomaly. The last thing I want to touch on as far as tax considerations go, this isn't so much a tax consideration as much as it is just a practice profitability and a practice cash flow situation. This is a good opportunity to sort of reforecast what revenue and expenses of your practice are going to look like. We're in a little bit of a different world right now insofar as revenues are pretty low, if not right down to zero. The expense structure of dental practices is dramatically different, considering the fact that we've laid off a lot of staff members in a lot of cases. We're not consuming as much in terms of supplies. Our labs are pretty much at idle right now. Those sorts of things. This is a good opportunity to sort of reforecast what the rest of the year could look like. And the more you know, and the more we learn about when we might be able to go back to work, as well as what financing options are going to be available through either EIDL or the Paycheck Protection Program, the better you can refine that forecast. But one of the worst thing that you could do is stick your head in the sand and just say, hey, I'm going to hope for the best. This is a good opportunity to be proactive so that you can make the relevant business decisions that as an owner you're going to need to make. Want to push forward and talk a little bit about loan deferment. Again, getting back to that cash is king mantra, I'm encouraging clients to reach out to lenders and see if there can be flexibility or payment deferments on some of their loans. Joe mentioned that Bank of America is providing payment relief for loans, lines of credit, credit cards. I encourage you to take advantage of any and all of those available to you. Like I said, Joe said that Bank of America is helping their customers out with that. I know other lenders that also lend in the dental space are doing something similar. Go ahead and call your credit card companies, personal and business, and see if you can get some flexibility from them as well. The more dollars you can hold in your account, the better you're going to be. The more solvent financially you can be, the better position you're going to be in to weather the COVID-19 storm here. One of the nice things that was recently made available is some relief on student loans. For those of you who are still dealing with student loans, there is now no interest or payment due for 6 months. Your student loans have to be federal and still through your federal loan servicer in order to take advantage of that. If any of you have student loans that you've refinanced through a vendor or refinancing company like SoFi and those types of things, you need to reach out to them directly. I know that they have relief programs in place as well, but those are going to vary from vendor to vendor. It's not necessarily the same deal that the federal program is offering. If you haven't reached out to your student loan vendor yet, no matter who it is, whether it's a private refinancing company like SoFi or if you're still with the Fed loan program, I would encourage you to do that immediately. Little bit of a different world that we're living in from a 401k and qualified plan standpoint. The CARES Act did include a couple of provisions for a little bit of easier access to cash from retirement plans. I will confess, as a certified financial planner, this is not exactly my favorite financial tactic, but sometimes in life and in business, we have to do what we have to do. So my recommendation for that type of situation is do the least damaging thing you possibly can. One of the things that the CARES Act provides for is a higher amount of 401k loans or a higher loan amount that can be taken from 401k plans. Some of you that have 401k plans may know that some plans allow you as a participant to borrow some money from your 401k account, and then that money is subsequently paid back over a certain number of years, typically 5 years at a stated interest rate. It used to be that the 401k loan amount was capped at $50,000 or 50% of your vested account balance, whichever was lower. So you couldn't borrow more than 50 grand. Well, the federal government, as part of the CARES Act, actually increased that limit to $100,000 or 100% of your vested balance, whichever is lower. So if you need a little bit of financial liquidity, if you need a little bit of cash, either on hand or to pay some bills or what have you, for those of you that have 401k plans, profit sharing plans, or cash balance plans, adding a loan provision to that plan or taking advantage of a provision that already exists in that plan could be an opportunity for you. Like I said, not exactly my favorite tactic as a financial planner, but if it's between that and taking just a distribution from the plan, which is taxable as income and also subject to a 10% penalty if you're under the age of 59, taking a loan is the far more benign option. For any of you that have been watching the stock market, you know that it's not a great time to take money out of investments, no matter how you're doing it, whether it's a loan or a distribution or what have you. But again, if it's something that you need to do to make sure that your household is as capitalized as it needs to be, or your practice is as solvent as it needs to be, it's something that you can do on a temporary basis and pay back over time if you're able to do so. So, just a quick sort of suggestion there. One of the other interesting things in the CARES Act delays required minimum distributions for investors that are in their 70s. For any of you on this webinar that have had 70 or more birthdays, you know that the IRS makes you take a certain amount out of your investment accounts every year, if those investment accounts are 401k, traditional IRA, or etc. That magic age actually went up to 72 last year with the passage of the Secure Act. And this year, with the COVID-19 crisis, as well as the stock market being a little bit more unfriendly than it has been historically, the IRS is waiving the requirement that investors in their 70s take those required distributions out of their accounts. So we're getting a little bit of relief there. If you're someone who was in your 70s and didn't need the money but was only taking it because it was required that you do so, you can go ahead and skip 2020 and thank your Uncle Sam for that. So. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was rent, as far as how rent is handled between your dental practice and especially the building that you may also own. Lots of my clients that own their own practices also own the buildings that those practices operate in, but the buildings exist as separate entities. Typically, those buildings are in separate LLCs, and there's an agreement between the dental practice and the LLC that owns the building for the practice to pay rent to the LLC. Coincidentally, that rental amount is either fair market value, a little north of fair market value, and or however much the payment is in the property taxes and those sorts of things. That's sort of how that's arrived at. I am encouraging clients to continue to pay rent from the practice to the LLC that owns the building. The reason that I'm encouraging them to do that is because occupancy expense like rent is one of those forgivable expenses in the EIDL and the Paycheck Protection Program legislation, so that if you're continuing to make those payments, that rent payment can be a forgivable expense depending on how you approach the program. So I know that a lot of practice owners would look at this situation and say, well, hey, that's a way that I can cut an expense out of my practice if I just stop making that payment to myself, essentially. I would encourage you to approach that with caution, because we want to have as many qualified expenses as we can so that we can qualify for forgiveness to whatever extent we participate in those loan programs. And Joe can probably address those questions a little bit better than I can, but I just wanted to make sure that we spend a few minutes talking about that. So I'm getting sort of to the end of my time here. I just wanted to share a couple of final thoughts. The first one that I want to share is that psychologically we are kind of we're kind of in a perfect storm, and by that I mean we've got bad news as it relates to COVID-19 and the number of cases and infections and those sorts of things. We've got bad news as it relates to what's going on in capital markets and stock market and that kind of stuff. And worse than that, we've got nothing but free time on our hands to sit and consume all this bad news. And eventually that can take its toll on our psyche. And I think Dan alluded to that in his part of the presentation. What I'm encouraging clients to do is to use this downtime to develop a plan for success. So use it to develop your personal financial plan as well as your practice management plan so that you can rebound from office closure as quickly as possible. For some of you, you haven't seen an environment quite like this before, and it's a little bit of a wake-up call to know that when you go back to work, you need to be approaching things a little bit differently and a little bit more tactfully. I also encourage you to keep track of personal money that you're putting into the business. For those of you that are practice owners that have had to come out of your own pocket to pay some operating expenses and that kind of stuff, make sure that you keep track of that so that you know if the business owes you money back, or you know how much money you can expect to take back out of the business when things normalize. You have that sort of on record to do so. Again, take advantage of any and all financial flexibility that's available to you, and communicate. And Dan talked a little bit about making sure you're reaching out to colleagues, making sure you're reaching out to staff, you're present on social media, you're doing all these things. Those are key. What I'm encouraging clients to do is look for opportunities to reach out to your staff, to your patients if possible, really to your colleagues in the community at large. And when you're reaching out, communicate with strength and with confidence always, because that actually radiates to the people around you. It's sort of a signal to your staff that you're still strong and this practice is going to survive. And the same thing to your patients. The worst thing that you can do is be part of the problem and join in on the pity party about how scary everything is and how hard these times are going to be and that kind of stuff. I would encourage you instead to posture yourself in a position of strength so that when people look to you, they see reassurance and leadership as opposed to someone who's just as terrified as they are. And remember, we're all in this together. Take COVID-19 as it comes. We're all in this together, and we're all going to come out the other side we're all going to come out the other side if we stay the course and think positively. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop the share on the PowerPoint, and I'm going to yield the rest of my time to whatever the moderators think we should do.
Great. We have about 15 minutes left for Q&A. And the first thing I will tell the panelists is that there is a tremendous number of questions about unemployment benefits. And since we do not have Jody Schaefer on the call with us, I will also say that our last webinar, we were very exhaustive on unemployment benefits. And since that time, Jody has actually updated our frequently asked questions that relate to unemployment benefits on the MDA website. So we are going to not answer all those specific questions, but we'd be happy to send those FAQs to all of you who are interested. In fact, we may send them to just everybody so you have them. And then, in addition, just to let you know that both Brandy Ryan, our HR director, and Jody Schaefer, of course, are both, after you've reviewed the FAQs, they're both available to answer specific questions that you may have about unemployment benefits. I will say, though, that one question that came up several times in the Q&A has to do with whether it is a problem when applying for either the EIDL loan or especially the payroll protection loan, if you have furloughed your employees and they will not be coming back to work for any appreciable length of time, maybe as much as 70 days, does that mean you're not eligible for that loan, or does it mean that perhaps you should wait and apply for it when they are back to work? So I don't know whether that would be a Joe question or a Ted question, but it's one that I had several people ask. So who would like to take that one?
Yeah, let me take that one for a second, and I'm going to pass it to Ted because he's probably got some other details and color commentary as well. I think one of the things that's important to understand is that there's this moment in time where the availability of the CARE Act dollars are available to everyone. And traditionally, we would, just in the traditional conventional lending, you would approve someone like all of you and give them a long period of time to make a decision whether this is the right thing for them or whether they want to accept that capital today or a month from now. Usually it's a 4-month period. You're not going to have that period of time here, it appears. It's going to be a shorter window, and then potentially, and that's an important piece to get with your advisors around, is how do I strategically use that short window to capture those dollars at the highest level. Ted was talking about the forgiveness portion and what's considered part of the forgiveness portion, but also the availability of the entire $350 billion is going to be for probably a limited time unless they go back for a second wave of support. But Ted, would you have a different commentary? And I know it's all new to everyone right now. Would you have a different add to that?
No, I think that Joe. I think that's right on. I'm thinking that I don't have anything else to add. I think you hit it.
Okay, well, a related question then that came in, people are questioning what besides payroll is an expense that is covered in the payroll protection, and in addition, what is the length of time that this period of time that should be addressed? What are the things that are covered? Obviously, rent, payroll. What other expenses are the kinds of things that count and perhaps would be forgiven?
Joe, do you want to take that, or would you like me to?
No, you got that one, Ted. That's a good question, though.
Sure, you throw it back to me because I have to look it up. I will tell you that there's a breakdown, and I could go with a couple of things off the top of my head, but Karen, I think they were already mentioned. But there is a breakdown of what's considered a qualified expense under EIDL, as well as what's considered a qualified expense under payroll protection. At the risk of giving bad advice, I will give no advice, but I can follow up at least with the best information I have at the moment, and we can blast that out to the attendees if that would be helpful.
Yeah, typically what we would do afterwards is, obviously we're not going to get through all the questions, so we'll go through and kind of compile them and make answers for them and get them out to all of you as quickly as we can afterwards, because we know we won't get to all of them. One question that has come up fairly frequently, though, is, what is considered an expense, a payroll expense? So, for example, your 401k or other employee retirement contributions. If you have people who are independent contractors, and so they're not employees, but you pay them and you're responsible for paying them based on the work that they do in the office, is that considered part of your payroll? What about paying yourself? Are you a part of your own payroll? We probably got 15 questions specifically on what is included when it comes to payroll.
So based on the descriptive that you have laid out there, almost everything on that list is included. So your 1099 employees that are employees that actually do procedures or are there in the office on a regular basis, not a 1099 employee, not a 1099 individual that comes in and does work for you, but someone that is part of the employee network would be included in that. And we're happy to provide the list of material that is necessary for you to prepare your package for submission, and it would include that information. So your last 12 months of payroll, 1099 employees are included, insurances, 401k contributions, interest paid on debt. There's a number of different items that would be considered part of the package for submission for qualifications, as well as a consideration, to Ted's point earlier, when you come back and apply for forgiveness. And Ted couldn't have given a greater advice with regards to separate accounts. And then having the payroll company tap into that separate account where you put the care money, because you will have to prove everything after in order for that forgiveness to take place, for that forgiveness to be approved. But that was great advice, and we surely can follow up with the list, but I'm pretty sure I covered that list.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. And
Sure.
I'm sure that each bank will have information on their websites as well that will be helpful about this. We have a number of people who seem a little confused about the difference between the EIDL and the payroll protection. And everyone is very interested in the $10,000 grant. And so what we had previously understood was that you apply for the EIDL. There used to be a PDF type of form that you filled out. A lot of people filled that out, and then they turned around and put a new computer form on the website, and so now we're getting people who said, I applied before using the paper form, but I don't have a confirmation number. Should I go online and complete it again so that I have a confirmation number, or will that cause a problem? I know you guys are not the Small Business Administration, but several people have asked that question, so I thought I would pass it along.
Yeah. I would be off my role right now and would say, depending on the amount of time that has lapsed, and of course everyone knows how the government operates, but depending on how much time has lapsed, a digital message and a digital footprint into the SBA for that program shouldn't be a penalty.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the other question they asked is any part of the EIDL loan forgivable? And I applied and they never asked me how much I wanted. So how do I know that what they will approve me for?
That's interesting. No part of the EIDL program is forgivable except for the $10,000 grant that is part of the application process. In fact, it's just the application process where you are at least intended to receive that $10,000, whether you're approved or not. But it's a little surprising that someone wouldn't, or the application wouldn't have asked you that question. So maybe the digital one should.
Yeah.
So the only forgiveness portion is that first $10,000.
Great. Thank you for that. I had somebody who asked, what does EIDL stand for? So I will just answer that. Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And I had someone also who asked, and this is a different question, could you please explain the employee retention tax credit? And how does that compare to the payroll protection loan? Could it be more advantageous to do the tax credit, or can you do both?
I can jump in on that a little bit if you'd like me to, Karen.
That'd be great.
Sure. So one of the things that's gone sort of unsung in this whole thing is that if you are not someone who's laid off your employees, which I believe most dental practices have, if you've kept them on, either paying them out of your pocket to stay home, or for whatever reason you were able to continue operating your practice, and I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but remember, these loans are built for more than just dental practices, so there's a lot of businesses in consideration here. If you keep your employees on, you can either get forgiveness on the payroll paycheck protection loan, or you can get a tax credit that is settled up on your 941, which is your payroll tax form. What we have kind of seen, it's something that has to be calculated on a case-by-case basis. Most dental practices are better off to take the loan forgiveness, but it's something that you and your accountant would need to calculate. The pros and the cons for before I could necessarily say one was certainly better than the other. So
good. That's helpful. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, this seems to be a lot of EIDL and PPP questions, but people are still a little confused about whether it's okay to apply for both. If I have already done EIDL and then the PPP application becomes available when it does, is it count against me if I've already completed the other one?
No, it doesn't count against you. You can apply for both. It's the receipt or the acceptance of the capital is where you have to make your decision. And that's, again, back to Ted's advice, is getting with companies like DVS or the Academy of Dental CPAs. Is just a great group of talented individuals across the country that provide some great guidance around the choices there. The point I was making is about your purpose. The purpose of both of those loans cannot be the same, but you can apply for both.
And who decides when the loans will be distributed?
Ted, you want to add some color commentary to that?
Well, yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Prior course.
I'd like to ask a question to kind of expand on that. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that I want to take the EIDL loan because, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I can use that loan to pay some accounts payable, pay some vendors, labs and supply companies and that sort of thing. And then I want to take the PPP loan to help with my labor costs, to help pay my staff. In your interpretation, can you do both? Can you do that strategy?
Yes.
Okay. That was my interpretation also. I just wanted to make sure I'm at least as smart as
Okay, we have just time for maybe two more questions. So these would be more of the questions for Dr. Peters. I've had someone who asked and says, I'm trying to keep in touch with my patients and doing the social media, but then I was thinking about my patients who are not on Facebook, or maybe not my friends on Facebook, I assume. So the question is do you recommend that, I go ahead and give people a call and just say, I'm checking in on you? or should we send notes? Is there anything besides social media that you think is a good idea and worth the time?
Yeah, no doubt, you cannot communicate too much. An ADA webinar that I watched recently was recommending calling all of our patients. Office with a couple of thousand patients, that might be a big ask, but we do have time. Certainly, notes, phone calls, anything you can do to be in touch. Let them know that you are there for them. It's the most important thing we can do.
130 questions that have come in. We've answered probably 15 or 20 of them tonight. We will go through and do some FAQs after this, but as Joe has pointed out, many of the questions will be answered when the application for the PPP loan actually becomes available. So that should be very helpful to you. One last question I have for Ted and for Joe and Dan is when people have found their application forms and assembled their information, I assume that they will need advice potentially. So is this the kind of thing that their CPA or accountant that helps them with their taxes can help them with? Or do you think the instructions will be fairly clear? Just wanted to know what kind of person can help them if they have a question like this. And of course, I know you guys are very helpful, but what type of person helps? Your own accountant could be of assistance?
Yeah, so Karen, can I just add, let me just answer and I can pass it to Ted and the team here. Number one, while we were on this call, the digital team had been communicating with me, and it looks like our application will be up live tomorrow for Bank of America. I can't say that for everyone. So those of you that are on this call that are Bank of America clients, after 9 o'clock tomorrow, it looks like I'm being told it's going to be up. So if it's at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, we're tracking very favorably, so that's a good sign. But absolutely, when you have people like Dan and people like Ted Schumann here, those are the people that can provide some guidance. And Ted, I would pass it to you.
I would be inclined to agree with that. I think to one of Joe's initial points, we are all what the finalized application is going to look like and how the process is going to look and feel. To that end, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your CPA or whoever you're working with from a tax and bookkeeping standpoint, and also reach out to your bank partners. Reach out to the people that you're going to be actually applying for this loan through, and they might be able to help you as well. So, the worst thing that you can do is try to go it alone and hope for the best. I would use this as an opportunity to kind of activate the people that you've been seeking advice from for probably a lot of years in your career, and make sure that they're guiding you to the best that they can and to the objective.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks to all our attendees tonight. I hope you got some good insight, good information, and you heard right from the horse's mouth, a preview of what's going to happen tomorrow with that PPP application going live. I hope you enjoyed the opportunity and are taking something back with you. Your CE vouchers will be mailed to you tomorrow via email. So I had a couple questions about that. We'll be working on FAQs after this, and just check the MDA website for any answers that we were not able to get to. Or you can always email us at the Michigan Dental Association, and we'll see what we can do to answer any question you may have. So once again, thank you, and thanks for being with us tonight. Good night, everyone.